Hey, welcome back to the channel. It is Friday, Fiction Friday, so it is time for another short story of exactly 1,000 words, written on the spot, inspired by a piece of artwork, and today we have a little bit of a meta piece of artwork. I will discuss that a little bit more when we talk about the artwork itself. But before we get there, what did I listen to? Well, a very inspiring film for me. I know it's not on everyone's love list. Most likely they're don't understand or dislike list, but it is Shane Carruth's Upstream Color. So I listened to the soundtrack, which he actually composed himself. He has turned into quite the character, and I don't believe we'll ever hear from him again in the film industry. But regardless, I still love his work and love the soundtrack. So cue it up and come upstream with me as we check out this week's artwork. This week's artwork is titled Flow. It's from an artist named Leo Brynilsson from Gothenburg, Sweden. Let us take a closer look. I think we all know what this means. I think if you are a creator of any type, you know exactly what this is, what the flow state is. But we have a gentleman who is standing before a canvas. The entire world around him is vanished. Well, I guess transformed into all of these fish swimming around, clustered together, their fins and tails kind of whipping around him. And those are connecting to a brush where he is painting those fish. So if you have ever been in the flow state, you'll know exactly what this feels like. It feels as if everything else bleeds away. The worlds you're creating, whether you are writing or painting or even writing music, whatever it may be, whatever kind of creative endeavor you are embarking on, everything just fades, and it's kind of a unique experience. It's a moment where you just keep typing or drawing or sketching or painting or whatever it is, and you don't ever need to stop. It's almost as if your subconscious has taken over and you're just kind of along for the ride. So I can only imagine that this is what this represents, but it has a dual meaning because, flow is, indicative of water, and we have fish floating around. So I appreciate the dual meaning there, and this one will be interesting. We'll see where it takes me. There's not obviously a lot of conflict there, so I will have to discover what that conflict will be. So Leo, thank you for the inspiring artwork, and let us hope that while I write the story, I find flow. All right, let's see what I came up with. The dark room. He stands in the doorway, looking in. He could turn back now. The glow of the TV behind him hits the white walls to either side of the door in myriad colors. He hopes something within himself might latch on to those colors. The void of the dark room is too strong. It keeps the colors at bay. It keeps him at bay. His foot struggles to cross the threshold. Colors dance on his shoe. They embrace him. They don't mean to harm him, but they do harm him. He forces himself through the colors that have extended past his shoe. They're on his leg now, his t-shirt as white as the walls. It's a canvas. Somehow he can see the colors there more clearly, more vividly. They strike him with their wonder, with their spell, and he almost gives in, just almost. An accident, perhaps, a slip, a gravitational force beyond his control. Whatever it is, it gets him inside the room, the dark room. He stands inside with the roar of the TV, with its sounds and colors fighting to win, but losing. He pats the wall for a switch. The smooth and cool wall reminds him of the touchpad of his laptop, ready to be warmed by his palms and the CPU within, once he fires it up to get lost in the abyss of its screen. He finds a single jagged key on the keyboard. He presses it. The room turns on. White walls, just like the hallway, but with vignettes where the light cannot reach. But light reaches many other things, brightens them and their disarray. Shelves tower with unread books. Dusty covers weigh him down with guilt. His games are also there, in boxes and cases. Lighter than the books, easier to pick up, to insert, to plug in and go. So many he hasn't tried yet. A cord divides his path across the floor. It leads to a controller with buttons worn smooth. The D-pad that's finicky but has character, who he's become close friends with over the years. He almost apologizes as he steps over it, then shakes his head at the stupid notion, which cocks his head just enough, just at the right moment to catch another TV, that sits next to the bookshelf on a stand. More game cases lie strewn at the TV's feet, as if thrown without the strength to reach him. He faces a new enemy, a new monster. Brighter than the walls and his shirt, but without color. The drone and the colors of the TV outside the room are gone. But maybe this new one would inspire him. Give him an idea, a prompt to set the stage. Because it was a stage, an empty one he must fill. A canvas. It rests on the pine easel large enough to hold a canvas nearly the size of the wall behind it. Because he has big aspirations, big plans. He just needs to start small. They always start small. Otherwise, you'll never start. Something is wrong with the canvas. It doesn't absorb light. It reflects it. His garbled reflection bends across it, as do the bookshelves and the TV, arcing over him like waves about to break. The only color on the canvas is a triangle of cardboard at the bottom right corner. He picks at it with a fingernail, but the cardboard is trapped behind a plastic sheet that seals the canvas. He grabs a pencil from a mug on his desk of scattered paper and empty paper cups, stained with wedges of coffee around their rims. The pencil isn't sharp. It won't break the plastic. Blunted from all the meaningless sketches crumpled on his desk he can't bear to look at. So much wasted time. So much wasted talent. He laughs at the second thought, from a voice he hasn't heard in a long time, who had supported his endeavors, because he told her it would take time, it would take patience, just like everything worthwhile, like everything that had meaning. So much waste. Pain stabs his hand, which is closed into a fist, both sides of the pencil sagging. He opens his hand to find the pencil broken in two, splintered right in the middle. He takes one half and cuts the plastic, which pops and slides away, shrinking on the floor behind the easel. He touches the canvas with both hands flat, and something presses back, kicks. He steps back and looks for more. He sees more disturbances where the imperfections of the canvas, the textures upon it create form. It changes depending on where he's standing, and his mind runs wild. His hands find a brush and palette and tubes of paint, but he doesn't take his eyes away from the canvas in fear of losing what must be released from it, because it has been imprisoned for far too long, caused so much waste, so much pain, more so than what throbs on his hand from the broken pencil, which was a Band-Aid that needed to be torn off, pulling hair and skin and scab to let blood flow free just like what's flowing now across the canvas, breaching its surface to show him color before he places it. So he chases it, that color, always behind but catching up with every beat, and the walls are gone, the room is dark and then full of those colors as the depths of the sea surround him, and fish glide from those depths, behemoths with ribbon tails and bubbles rising from their mouths, but he is not afraid, because he is possessed by a desire to translate their form and value onto the canvas, while the very water they swim in aids in blending the paints, creating edges, highlights, shadows, and he is with them, within their world, and the sweat on his hands and leaking from his hairline does not disturb the process, does not disrupt this beautiful flow. Welcome to the interview. I'm so glad you made it. This is where I talk about my final thoughts, what I liked, what I didn't like, maybe what I learned, and here is the writing itself already up here. I don't know why I didn't ever start this section with it already up, but here we go. It's a learning process, I guess. So you'll know now that why this was meta. It is because it is about the flow state. It's about the state we get into as creatives, whatever you are trying to create, whether it be art, music, writing, and something else I'm sure I've forgotten. It's that moment where it feels as if your subconscious takes over, that you are just recording down what is happening within your head, essentially, and not really necessarily part of the creative process. It's kind of a detachment. It almost feels as if you are there with the character or characters. But that was the inspiration for this one. And structurally, what I did is I tried to keep things choppy. I tried to create obstacles because a very wise man, a successful writer named Stephen Pressfield, wrote a book called The War of Art, and that is about what he coins resistance, which is that force, that thing that stops us from sitting down and starting our stories, sitting down into our keyboards and and just moving forward. It's all of the excuses, it's all of the things in the way. And so that is what I was trying to do here. I created a dark room. I created somebody on the precipice of creating, where he is looking into this doorway. But the glow of the TV, his first obstacle, the thing that he maybe had been doing beforehand, is glowing on the walls beside him. So he's looking inside this room toward what he needs to do, what he wants to do. He really wants to do it, but somehow he's not doing it. And I think that's the most interesting thing about what I'm going to call, just like Stephen Pressfield, resistance, is that we all want to do this stuff, but for whatever reason, it's hard to sit down sometimes. I don't really quite understand it. Maybe I will need to revisit that book again. And if you haven't read that book, I highly suggest it. It's a way to, I guess, personify this thing that we aren't sure how to completely label. So he labels it for us. But what I was trying to do is start subtle, right? So it's not something that's inherently in his vision. It's these colors that are hitting the walls in myriad colors, and he's almost seduced by it, right? He hopes something within himself might latch onto those colors. The void of the dark room is too strong. It keeps the colors at bay. It keeps him at bay. So he kind of at a moment thinks that, hey, this is my inspiration. I'm going to use this. Maybe, do I need to go back? Do I need to go back to the TV and sit down and watch some stuff, maybe to be inspired? But anyway, he pushes forward. His foot struggles to cross the threshold. Colors dance on a shoe. Those colors from the TV are still apparent. They embrace him. They don't mean to harm him, but they do harm him. Again, internal struggle, trying to pull him back to the couch or wherever this TV is that he's been watching this stuff. But he forces himself through the door. And they're on his leg now. They're on his t-shirt, as white as the walls. It's a canvas. And this one I first began to hint at the fact that we're dealing with a painter here. It's not a literal description, but it is something nonetheless that alludes to what we are going to approach as we get further into the story. But the colors, they strike him with a wonder, with their spell, and he almost gives in, just almost. An accident, perhaps, a slip, a gravitational force beyond his control. Kind of like resistance, but in the inverse. But it gets him inside the room, right? It's some kind of inspiration, power. I have no idea, but it pushes him inside. But then again, it gets him inside the room, the dark room, the dark room. It is still a dark room. And he stands inside, but now the roar of the TV, right? Resistance is rearing its head, literally screaming at him from the other room to try to get him back, to convince him to come back and watch some movies, I guess, or do whatever he's going to do out there. But they are losing these colors, and he's looking for the switch, and he finally finds it. But what do? I give him another obstacle, something that reminds him of something else. So the smooth and cool wall reminds him of the touchpad of his laptop, ready to be warmed by his palms and the CPU. Within once he fires it up to get lost in the abyss of its screen. So yet another thing, right? He's finally crossed the threshold, but there's still more resistance to be had, and that is the keyboard, or what reminds him of his laptop. But he presses it regardless. He flips the switch, and this is when I start to introduce more of the artistic nature of things. So he sees more white walls. We establish where he's in a room. It's no longer a dark room, but there are vignettes where the light cannot reach. And so I don't know. I just kind of pictured like a way to introduce something without color. It gives you a nice focal point kind of look, and so that's why I went with vignettes. But the light, it highlights other things, unfortunately, yet another obstacle, another piece of resistance. It brightens them in their disarray. There are shelves of unread books. Oh, I wonder where I got that idea from. Yeah, I have plenty of unread books behind me. But he also sees something else. He sees video games that are also there. I guess could be argued board games too, in boxes, in cases. Lighter than books, easier to pick up. Ooh, this is very seductive. To insert, to plug in and go. So many he hasn't tried yet. So again, more and more things to take him away from his craft, what he needs to do. And it makes me wonder, I always like to surround myself in things that are inspirational, like all of the authors and the artwork on my walls. But I don't know, maybe sometimes you need to just put yourself in an empty room, maybe. I don't know. Maybe that's why riding in my car during my lunch breaks worked so well. There was nothing out there. I guess I did have the view outside the window, but no art, no books, nothing to pick up and distract me. And he keeps going still, and he finds his chord. It leads to a controller with buttons worn smooth, a D-pad that's finicky but has character, who he's become close friends with over the years. So still, more things to deal with. And then finally, he passes through, sees yet another TV, possibly his gaming TV. More game cases lie strewn at the TV's feet as if thrown with the strength to reach him. So I wanted to use some personification there. So I like to do that a lot with things. It just gives a more insight into the character. So sometimes you want to describe things exactly how they are, but I feel like at least with limited third, which I prefer to write in, you want to describe things how through the character's eyes and feelings, right? There is, I do respect plain language, but sometimes it lacks the nuance unless you're a master at it, someone like Cormac McCarthy. But here, like I said, it feels as if the TV at the last second tried to throw this out like a net to capture him almost, or almost to beckon him forward with these games that are on the floor. And he faces a new enemy, a new monster. And it's brighter than the walls on a shirt, but without color. That means that the TV is off, but there's something that is more compelling about it because he's just completely surrounded at this point. He questions it. He's asking a question, but maybe this new one would inspire him. Give him an idea, a prompt to set the stage because it was a stage, an empty one he must fill, meaning he's thinking he's crossed the threshold. He left his TV in the living room or wherever it is outside this room, and now he's like wondering, hey, maybe I should sit down and play some games. Maybe that will inspire me. Maybe it'll give me some ideas about what I need to do. And this empty stage he describes he must fill is a canvas. And this is when I finally get down and describe what he's looking at. And it's on this pine easel, large enough to hold a canvas nearly to the size of the wall behind it, because he has big aspirations. And so this was a little bit of world building, a little bit of backstory building I was trying to do the character. Very small, right? So they always say start small, otherwise you'll never start. That is advice that I wish I would have listened to with my first novel, because I wish I would have written short stories, a very short novel, something like that. But I decided to write a 100,000 word novel as my first thing. And it was a hell of a task. I don't think I would go back and change it, but I brought some of that wisdom I've heard to this story as well. But something is wrong with the cabinet. Yet another thing to hold him back. What is it? It's not absorbing light like it should. It's reflecting it, which is indicative of the plastic wrap around this thing. And there's a little cardboard triangle in the corner, which is going to be the brand of this canvas. And he starts picking at it, but he can't quite do it. And what happens next? He's looking at his desk full of crumpled artwork, sketches that were failed, coffee cups with these coffee stained lip marks on them. But he finds a pencil. It's not sharp. And then this is more backstory here, right? Where he's so much wasted time, so much wasted talent. He laughs at the second thought. And this is when I bring in potentially a significant other. It could be somebody else, but a woman who has supported his endeavors because he told her it would take time. It would take patience, just like everything worthwhile, like everything that had meaning. So I think we get in our heads a lot about something. We think that you can't do things quickly. Things take time. They take years to do right. But I think there's truth in that to a degree. Do I believe that someone can write a magnum opus or some kind of memorable classic of a novel in 30 days? I don't know. I'm sure there's somebody who can do that, but I feel like the only way you could do that is if you were really sort of writing it inside your head before you took anything to the page, because there's just so much that goes into that. I mean, yeah, you could craft a story in 30 days. Plenty of these indie authors do. They just crank out novels month after month after month. But I kind of view those as McDonald's, right? They're like junk food stories. There's really nothing of depth there. They're pure entertainment. If you're entertained by such things, and hey, there's nothing wrong with that. If that's your brand, if that's what you want to do, go for it. But if you do have a novel that you've read, that you know, indie or not, that has been written in 30 days, then go for it. I believe On the Road by Jack Kerouac was written in about 3 weeks. But again, he had all these life experiences, and then he'd go up to a cabin and just have this writing binge. That was his style. But again, he was pre-writing essentially. But anyway, on with the story. I do this to, again, this is something I love to do, and maybe I overuse it. I'm not quite sure. I try to kind of use it sparingly when it makes sense to create a beat or a tempo, a cadence to the story. And so this is a way to emphasize something without using italics, because I know a lot of you guys out there love to use italics to emphasize things. This is a different way. It's actually white space on the page. It's a visual cue for you to know this is punctuated. But while he's pissed, right, this is when the scene turns, right? This is when so much waste, and he's squeezing his hand. He doesn't know it yet. He breaks this pencil, splinters in two. It gives him the edge, the knife's edge he needs to cut away the plastic on this canvas, and it slides away. It pops as he cuts it, shrinking on the floor behind the easel. And then he touches it, and he feels something. This is more kind of, in a way, personification, but he feels something press back. He feels a kick, almost like a new life, right? A pregnant woman with a baby kicking on the inside of her belly. He steps back and looks for more. He sees more disturbances where the imperfections of the canvas, the textures upon it create form. It changes depending on where he's standing, and his mind runs wild. So this is when everything happens. This is when he gets his flow. He gets his inspiration. He has crossed the threshold, the various thresholds. He has passed all of these guardians. And now, the last bit of technique I would like to share with you is a single sentence paragraph. I'm not saying this is the best by any stretch, but what I wanted to do here, again, I think a lot of people don't think about creating pacing or meaning with the actual words themselves, the construction of the way these words are, because a lot of people think that they kind of look at it like, okay, well, what do the words mean? That's what you should get meaning from. I believe that's limited thinking. I believe because, maybe it's because I'm a very visual person. I appreciate white space. I appreciate things like these when they are used for good effect, right? Not when they're used just for style, but when it has something that has deeper meaning to it. So Cormac McCarthy famously did. I don't think I'll forget the line in or the run-on sentence. It might have been an entire chapter even, but it was in Blood Meridian, and there was this chaotic battle with some Native Americans, and it was just one crazy long sentence. And the reason why it works so well is because that's what battle might feel like. I mean, I've never been in a battle, but just this never-ending. There's no pauses. It's just this constant flow, this rush of something happening. And so that's what I was trying to create here. His hands find a brush and a palette and tubes of paint, but he doesn't take his eyes away from the canvas in fear of losing what must be released from it, and on and on and on. I won't read this entire thing for you, but this is when I establish he's in the flow state. Obviously, the walls are literally peeling away from him, and he sees these behemoth fish, which he is trying to translate down into the canvas, and so I wanted to communicate his flow with this ongoing sentence, with this uninterrupted sentence full of commas and becauses and ands. Yeah, he just keeps going, and the sweat on his hands and leaking from this hairline does not disturb the process, does not disrupt this beautiful flow. So that is the story. A couple things to note about this, like I said, is the continual sentence, the unbroken sentence, the run-on sentence used for effect to demonstrate he's in a flow state. And before that, I was trying to create, I don't think I achieved this 100%, but I was trying to create some of the lines to be a little bit choppier, right? A dark room. He stands in the doorway looking in. He could turn back now, and so on and so forth. You can see that this line's a little bit longer, but I was trying to create kind of a stuttered or a staccato tempo, just to kind of further emphasize him as being stuck in procrastination. And I was thinking, like, I really wanted to try to tease that out a little bit more, but I decided to be kind of a stumbling block, or at least, like I said, more stuttered writing until he hit his flow, until the scene turned and he found it. So I hope you like the story. As far as what I would change, I mean, I think it is what it is. I think if I could perfect this story, I think it would be less about the content of the story and more about the construction of these lines and the words and the sentences. So keep them short, maybe slowly build, maybe do a back and forth, and who knows, maybe it's there and I just didn't look close enough. But let me know, have you experimented with something like this in your own writing? Do you write something that is, you're literally doing wordplay here? It's also not just what the words mean, but how they are configured. Thanks for hanging out with me. As always, thanks for watching, and keep reading, keep writing, and I will see you next week. Thanks. Bye. If you'd like to read the story in its non-video format, check the link in the description. I didn't edit anything else, promise. Thanks again.